to another installment of our DF Seeds podcast. Appreciate everyone for joining us. My name is Janna Fritz. I'm the current president of DF Seeds. Today we have Chris Varner, the former president of DF Seeds, joining us. Chris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Janna. Appreciate it.
Excited to talk with you and gather some more history and your insight from your time here at DF. So let's jump right in. You've had a great career in seed production and growing seed and offering that as a superior brand for DF. So what inspired you to pursue a career in seed physiology and seed production and processing? What got you into this business?
So I was raised on a small cash crop farm in central Michigan. My dad raised Michigan certified seed, Frankenmuth white wheat way back when, and some dry beans, some certified dry beans before, the diseases came in and all that production went to Idaho and out west. So I kind of had the seed thing in my background.
Yeah.
I'm also the youngest of 10 kids, and I followed 5 older brothers to Michigan State. My oldest brother, when he went to Michigan State in 1970, his grades coming out of high school weren't the best to get him in. And he went down, him and my parents went down and met with Dr. Larry Copeland from the Crops and Soils Science Department. And Dr. Copeland was the professor that would be the seed physiology and would teach seed production courses and stuff like that. And so Dr. Copeland had my brother take some summer classes, and he was the first one then in our family to get into Michigan State. And so when I went down, 14 years later, Dr. Copeland was a friend of the family's at that point, because he had quite a few of us. And so I kind of always knew I wanted to pursue that right out of high school. The day after I graduated from high school, I went to work for Michigan Crop Improvement Association, which is the state seed certifying agency in Michigan. And so just from working there, both in their field inspections during the summer, doing field inspections at certified seed growers. And then during the school year, I worked in the seed lab. So I would plant the germination test. I would prep them for readout. And so I was just really around seed a lot those first couple years of college. I got on the crops judging team with Dr. Copeland and, got real involved with the agronomy club. Stayed working for Michigan Crop basically throughout all of college, but I had 2 summers where I interned with Great Lakes Hybrids with their quality control department, doing their field checks on their seed corn production fields in Michigan and northern Indiana. So that's where I really started to learn a lot about seed corn production, and that's where I'm like, this is what I want to do, and I want to really focus on the seed quality, because there's so many things that you can do to mess up a germ on seed, and most of them are really easily mitigated, or you can fix them really easy. You just can't do them in the first place. So kind of became my passion, and it became that way because I really liked the grower contact. I liked being out in the field, even doing those field inspections for Michigan Crop Improvement as an 18-year-old. I really liked going out on the farm, meeting people and doing those field inspections. I felt like I was making a difference. I was alerting them to something in their field. Or, part of that is you estimate the yield on, wheat, soybeans. And so I think I got pretty good at doing that, at a very young age.
Yeah.
So yeah, but just a combination of things, but really, Dr. Copeland and the fact that I could not be in an office.
Okay, very good. So you've told us a little bit about what got you into seed physiology. What brought you to DF? How did you get involved then with Diehl Fields and DF Seeds?
So I had spent the first 17, 18 years of my career working for Glen Farm Seed in Stockbridge, Michigan, who is a wholesale seed production company on both soybeans and seed corn. I had my oldest daughter and was commuting about almost an hour to work over in Wayne County at the time.
Wow.
And decided that, you know, this isn't for me. And so when it was time for me to go back to work, I decided to be a stay-at-home mom for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And my former boss at Michigan Crop Improvement called me that summer, so 6 months into this, and said, I have some seed corn fields that need inspected, and I know you're not working. Would you be interested in, you know, doing that on the side? And, you know, since you know how to do it and I don't have to train anybody.
Yep.
And my husband was working afternoons at the time, so I said, sure. And so I started doing, I did that for that, you know, 5-6 weeks there in the summer. And that's where I had known Nate Glenn from him using the Michigan Crop Improvement Lab. So I knew him and knew who he was, but I hadn't really had any discussions with him. But out of that, I started going back to work for Glen Farm Seed on a part-time basis. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, went full-time in their seed corn production and their soybean processing plant. Yeah, so to kind of expand on that, I had left Glen Farm Seed and went to Michigan State to work. So I felt like I was in a good place, working for my alma mater. It may not have been as challenging as I wanted it to be, and it was not in the seed business. And I had been doing that for about 1.5 years, and John Diehl saw one of my brothers at a seed meeting, and was able to coerce my phone number out of my brother. And John called me and said that because of our prior relationship, I came to mind when he was thinking about trying to transition his company in 5 to 10 years. And so imagine I was like, oh, okay. So, out of respect, I stopped on my way home from work that day and talked to John and went home that night and decided that I was quitting my job at Michigan State and going to work for DF. I really believe that I stopped there out of respect for John and our mutual working relationship, but I left there that night with a whole new level of respect of him as a person and him as a seedsman, and the opportunities just seemed exactly what I was looking for. So that was a fit, and I didn't think the transition from operations manager to president would really happen 6 years after I started there, but John had made the decision that, you know, it's time. I thought I had about 2 or 3 more years, but you know, it's only time. So you know, you can't get it back. So we transitioned to you know, John sold his share of the company in 2015, and then I transitioned from operations manager to president. Sure. Although the company at that time, and for the most part still is pretty small. But the company at that time, I transitioned from operations manager to president, but there was also nobody backfilling my operations manager role. So I just, you know, you do what you have to do in a small company. Yep. And, you know, I had, you know, set up a lot of the crop production plans alongside John and processing, and, you know, had really spent that time learning, like, why do you bring in this variety over this variety early, and just some of those nuances that you have when you're you know, making decisions when you have 40 some varieties of soybeans to run in a small amount of time. And, so the transition between operations manager and president wasn't like I'm operations manager one day and president the next day, because
not so cut and dry. Okay.
It wasn't so cut and dried. The president's role did bring with it a lot more day-to-day financial responsibility, and just really understanding that like the decisions you're making are going to impact your bottom line, but it's going to impact your employees, their outlook of the company and their perception of the company they're working for, and just trying to make that as smooth as possible.
Yep.
John had been there a long time, and all of a sudden employees weren't answering to John anymore. They were answering to me. So
Sure.
it was very collaborative. And, like as far as the seed plant, I know the steps for processing. I know why we do everything. But for me to go on out there and flip on all those 8 motors or whatever needs to do to run the plant, that's not me. That's why we have really good people in the plant that do that. I just was trying to make that transition as smoothly as possible. So it was very collaborative. All 3 guys that work in the plant, and they still work there, have been with the company longer than I have. So, I leaned into them. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Great. Very good. So you come from a seed background. You had worked for crop improvement, working on processing. All of that experience probably still, you had to face some challenges, right? The experience drives the decisions made to face the challenges. Tell us a few of those early challenges, or any challenges that you've overcome with the DF brand when you were president, Chris.
Shortly after I started work for John, I decided to go ahead and get my master's degree online through Iowa State in seed business and technology.
Okay.
And so basically it's an MBA, but you got the technical seed classes, seed production, seed physiology. So it's kind of like a hybrid degree. But so as I was going to write my master's final, they say that you should do it on something that, that's going to help you in your career or help you in your current business.
Absolutely.
And I decided at that time we never had any kind of written down anything as far as this is the procedures that you follow when you're going from deciding to produce a soybean seed to packaging it and shipping it to the farmer. So during that transition to presidency, I was writing my master's final at the same time. So basically I wrote my master's final on seed production processes and policies and like procedures.
Yeah.
And basically what that became is kind of like a written map of, this is what we do and this is why we do it. And it had never been written down before. So it was really, really good just to document things. And then, of course, when I left, then, we got other people that are looking at that and learning from that, because let's face it, in a small business, especially one as specialized as the seed business, you're not going on Indeed and saying, I need a seed plant manager in Michigan, or having all these people that know exactly what to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, that was really important to me, because I think for the longevity of the company, John Diehl had so much in his head and I had so much in my head that wasn't documented, that it was really, it was a high risk for the company if something had happened, to John or myself. So,
Very
yeah.
good.
Other challenges is in all my years in the seed business, believe it or not, I had to reject very, very few loads of soybean seed coming into the plant. And, that's mainly because of our quality control procedures in place. We would, if there's a problem with the lot, we really should know it before it even hits the plant. If we didn't, then something happened like post harvest in a bin or something like that. But let's see, I think it would have been growing season 2020, we had some soybeans that stayed out in the field too late, and they had pod and stem blight really bad. And so, we work through, what can we put on the seed to control those that surface-borne disease. And so then we came up with thiabendazole, and we had to, do numerous tests, hand treat, do numerous tests to make sure the germ was going to be up to DF standards, which is 90% warm.
Yep.
And that was the first time in my career that I had really had to do something that unique. I knew it was always, in the arsenal that we could use it if we needed to. But a lot of seed production, not just from DF, but every company that year had a lot of issues because of the fall we had. Yeah, so that was challenging, and but we got through it.
Yep.
It's hard as a small company to reject a contract grower seed, because he doesn't get the premium, and he just did all that work. So it is a difficult thing to do, and that's the first time I had to do it in 33 years. So
Wow.
not bad.
Yeah. So to that then, in furthering that question, I guess, Chris, in terms of quality control, right? That's one of the pillars of DF Seeds. John started, you perpetuated. One of the things that we do to add value is the high quality, because of our differentiation, right? Because that we're working with hybrids, with varieties that are designed for Michigan. Talk to us about your role in ensuring that the high quality is maintained and that we're selecting varieties that will perform for Michigan farmers for the needs that they have, for yield, for disease resistance. How did you go about making some of those variety selections to keep them, or make the best options available to Michigan farmers?
So I went to the John Diehl School of Learning.
Uh-huh.
John was very much a stickler, as anybody that's watched those podcasts knows, about quality and making sure that the product you're delivering to the farm gate is up to par and meets our high standards. I am a huge believer that seed companies play probably one of the most important roles, if not the most important role, in a farmer's decision-making process. Because if you start already in the hole because you're planting inferior seed, then when that weather event happens, or those spider mites come in, or whatever happens, you just dig yourself a little deeper in the hole. So if you can start high quality, in it's always been my belief, if you can start high quality, then you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of most people.
Yep.
The way we've always maintained it is testing, and more testing. Once we've decided to produce something, I'll go back to the selection in a minute, but once we've decided to produce something, the seed that we get, the parent seed that we get, is tested, especially if it's a non-GMO. I test the parent seed that we get to make sure that there is no GMO contamination in there before we even start producing something. And then we don't usually go into production right away with something. What I mean by, we try to look at it for 2 years in various test plots, university testing. We do a white mold screening. So we're trying to make sure that those varieties that we are selecting are up to our standards, even though, we haven't looked at them. We're looking on a piece of, the selection team is looking at a piece of paper saying, these are the traits we want. This is, the right maturity. It's got brown stem, good brown stem rot and good white mold. And then we kind of start looking at the yields, and well, if it didn't yield well in the breeder trials in Michigan, a lot of times we don't do it because it can do great in the I states, but that doesn't really translate. There's a lot of beans that do great in the I states that don't do good in Michigan.
Yes, sure.
So then we do have to consider that when when selecting varieties to test. And we test extensively, as you know. Spend a lot of money on testing, and there might be 2-3 varieties that go forward out of 50-55 tested a year, say, on the soybean side alone. But we're really looking at those screenings as far as like the white mold resistance. For an example, is when enlist beans first came out, China approved the export, and all of a sudden we were producing enlist seed, like found out in February that we were going to be going to the field with it in April, May, right? For seed production.
Yep.
So we selected based off no field test. And then the breeders had testing and stuff that we could look at, but we had never grown it ourselves or put it in any test plots.
Okay.
So we put that enlist test seed, the test seed and our seed production, all in a white mold screening. And some of them were horrible for white mold.
Gotcha.
So given this as an example, like if we hadn't screened that, and I would have went into the thumb of Michigan and sold that, said, oh yeah, it's good on white mold, and I wouldn't be selling much in the thumb of Michigan ever again, probably. It could have been really disastrous. So that's just why it's important to do that. Our non-GMO quality, we test at the bin. Well, we do this for everything, but especially non-GMO. We test at the seed bin, get a composite sample from the seed bin. We test that when it arrives at the plant, visually looking for any off types, anything that could or might impact the purity of the seed. The guys in the plant know, like, if they see something stop, it's better to stop unloading the truck than to keep on loading and compound any problems further. But then after we've processed our non-GMO seed, the screenings get hauled to a non-GMO user that also does a non-GMO test on those screenings. And so we know if there's non-GMO in our screening, depending on the percent. Usually you can get anywhere from 1/4 to 0.5% sometimes. That's okay, because those are screenings and it came out of our seed.
Sure.
So, and then of course the final samples, after they've been packaged or after they've been treated, are sent to the lab for verification too on everything. It's not just non-GMO at that point. It's non-GMO, it's germ, it's seed purity, that kind of thing. So we do spend a lot of, I think DF is pretty unique, and we spend a lot of money on testing. Really, seed law requires you to have a warm germ at 90% above, and that's really all you need besides varietal purity to print a seed tag. So DF really does go above and beyond on that.
Great. No, that's very good to hear the explanation of that, and to allow our viewers to know all that goes in prior to their receiving that bag of seed, right? So great.